Hi guys, welcome to Dev Talk with FK, and today we're going to be looking at the front-end developer roadmap for 2023. Now, before I decided to do this video, I thought I was going to come up with my own roadmap and design the whole thing. But I found these excellent roadmaps on roadmap.sh, and I couldn't have done a better job than this. These guys are amazing. So we're going to be going through their own roadmap, and we're going to be looking at what they are recommended here. I would also have my own personal opinions about it, but I think most of the time I will agree with theirs because they've done a very great job here. So let us begin the front-end developer roadmap. So let's begin. We are going to be walking through the front-end developer roadmap, and we're going to be taking this from top to bottom. As you can see, these are all the items they have for us here. So let's just go back up, just to give you a quick view. And let's start from the very beginning. Now, at first, they have this key here, sort of like a legend. So you have the purple tick. This is their own personal recommendation or opinion. So any item that is marked with the green one is an alternative pick. So let's say they list 3 things or 2 things. The ones with the green check mark are the alternative ones to the recommended one. And they also have this gray tick, which is not strict. That is, any item that is marked with the gray tick, you can learn it anytime. It's not a blocker to the step-by-step process of learning, or the tools or the technologies that you have to learn one by one. And also, whatever they mark with this gray circle, they don't recommend. Just keep it. Don't even think about it. So let's begin. The first item here is the internet. Now, as a front-end developer, you are building internet-based applications, so you have to learn about the internet. And I think this is where most of us get it wrong, I myself included, because we just want to start coding immediately. So we skip the whole knowledge about the internet and go straight to learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Topics under the internet include how does the internet work. You get to study things like IP addresses, ports, and stuff. If you've ever heard about the OSI model, if you can just go through the OSI model, even if it is from a theoretical standpoint, that would really help, because you get to learn about the application layer, the session layer, the presentation layer, which is everything that goes on in your browser. You also learn about the transport layer, which is what the operating system does to use TCP or UDP to help you transfer your messages. That's your payload that is coming from your web applications. And also you get to the network layer, where your IP addresses operate. That's how we access the internet. Then the data link layer, where the MAC addresses operate, and we have the physical layer, which is the last thing, which is where your bits and bytes move across the wire. So learning how the internet works is something that you don't need to go deep. You don't need to go deep into this. All you need to do is to understand the simple concepts of IP addresses and ports, and how data is transferred from one end to another on the internet. But if you want to go deeper, learn as much as all the big routers that are making the internet work, or things like the BGP protocol, I have a book that I can recommend for that. I have a book that I got because there was a time I was working at a cybersecurity company and I needed a lot of networking knowledge. So I went down to the fundamentals to learn about how the internet works, and I got this book. It's a very simple book. It has a lot of fun interactive pictures. Yeah, pictures like this. Fun interactive pictures that help you to simply explain the internet and how everything works. This small but mighty book has a whole lot of information in it. So yeah, how the internet works. Like I said, you don't need to go too deep, but it's very important you understand the concept of IP addresses, ports, because ports are how your applications on the on your system are located, and how your browser transfers data from one end to another. So yeah, that's all on how the internet works. Like I said, you can learn that as much as you want to, but the basic concepts, if you can learn the OSI model, that's going to be great. The next is HTTP. Now, HTTP is the protocol of the web, the hypertext transfer protocol. This is a very key and fundamental topic if you're going to be a very efficient and effective web developer. Front-end developer, back-end developer, HTTP is very important, because understanding the protocol that the web uses, it's fundamental to everything that we are trying to develop for the web. And as a front-end developer, you're going to be making a lot of API calls, and you have to understand how APIs are constructed, how you can send HTTP messages, what makes up HTTP messages and HTTP requests and responses. This is where you get to learn about things like headers, payload, and all sort of stuff. So HTTP Very, very important. You also get to learn about advanced stuff like gateways, tunnels, and all sort of things. HTTP authentication, basic authentication, digest authentication, and all sorts. So HTTP is a very, very powerful topic. There was a video I made on 5 books that every web developer needs to read, and one of the books I recommended was an HTTP book. I'll be adding the links to the description, but this is the book. This HTTP Definitive Guide. That is the book I recommended in that video. So you can check the link in the description for this book. Yeah. So these first two are very, very fundamental to your career as a web developer, front end or back end. You don't want to miss how the internet works and how HTTP works. Very, very key. Then you also want to learn about how browsers work. As a front end developer, the browser is your own environment. For back end developers, they will be mostly operating within web servers. But as a front end developer, you're going to be operating within browsers, and you want to learn things like the document object model, the browser object model. For a long time, I didn't even know that there was something called the BOM, the browser object model. So you want to learn stuff like that. You want to learn about browser networking, how many TCP connections the browser can open at once, and how you can efficiently, send API requests in the browser environment, how you can manage memory within the browser, and all sort of stuff. So yeah, you want to learn how browsers work. Very, very important. How DNS works, yeah, the whole domain name resolution to IP, that's also important. You don't also want to go too deep in this, as long as you know that there's something called a DNS server that needs to be queried when a domain name is entered into the browser, and it resolves that domain name to an IP address. Yeah, you're good. You're good. You can just go on with that. You also want to know what a domain name is, because on the internet, we as humans, we don't use IP addresses. We use human readable names, and those are the domain names. For example, facebook.com or google.com, those are domain names. But every domain name is tied to an IP address, because the computer, the machine itself, needs an IP address for its operations. So those names are resolved to an IP address, one IP address per name. So you want to know what a domain name is. You want to know how to set one up. You want to know things like TTL and domain records and stuff like that, all under the DNS topic. Then what is hosting? Yeah, you want to know what hosting is all about. I personally lost a client because I didn't know what hosting is all about. So you can guess how important that is. So you want to know what hosting is, how to host a website, how to connect that, or rather a website, a web application, how to connect that application to a domain name and make it accessible on the internet. So yeah, that covers the whole internet section. So next on the list is HTML. Now, I remember when I discovered HTML, I was trying to learn web development, and I was given this PHP book. So I just got PHP and I started reading the book. But thank God I read the preface, because it was in the preface that I saw that the author mentioned that if you have not learned HTML, drop this book now and go to HTML. So then I didn't even know that there was some. I was just very, very excited about learning about web development, and the closest book I saw was a PHP book. But that book sent me right back to HTML, which I really enjoyed learning. So you want to learn HTML. Let us go to the HTML breakdown. So first you have the basics, which is given this purple tick here. So you want to learn the basics. You want to learn as many tags as you can, and don't just learn a tag and learn a few attributes. Learn like 80% of the attributes you can use on a tag, because there's so much power behind HTML, and a lot of people are trivializing it because they are not learning HTML very well. So you want to learn HTML and learn it properly, learn it deep. I remember when I was learning HTML, I spent like 2 months on it, and I was learning it for 8 hours every day. That's HTML. Until today, you can wake me up anytime and I will write very good HTML. So you want to learn the basics. Semantic HTML, yeah, that's good, because you'll most likely start working in a team, and some standards need to be defined. So you want your HTML to be well written and be semantic, so that everybody can have a standard structure and it can be readable for members of the team. Forms and validation. As a web developer, as a front-end developer, 50% of your work is going to be forms. So you want to learn how to write proper forms, and you want to learn how to validate them. Even if your backend is going to help with the validation, you want to make sure that you have done some due diligence from the user perspective to make sure you are validating the input, so that the server will have less work to do. Another thing is conventions and best practices for HTML. For example, how to write structured HTML. You want to also make sure that you arrange your HTML tags in a readable form. I've worked with some team members that write terrible HTML. Everything is all scattered. You can't even know the hierarchy between the tags. So that can be a struggle. So you want to learn best practice conventions. You want to use the right tags for the right purposes. Some tags came in at the point in HTML, like the header tag, like the footer tag, the sidebar tag. It was all to enforce these best practices and writing very good HTML. So yeah, we have accessibility. Yeah, you want to have that as a skill set as a front-end developer, because you want people that use screen readers or people that have problem with reading a screen or have like color blindness to be able to also consume your content. So in as much as that might not be a blocker to your HTML practice, you also want to have that in your tool belt. We also have the SEO basics. You want to write HTML in a way that it can easily be discovered. The content that you're trying to push can be easily discovered by search engines. So you want to make sure that you do the site engine optimization. You want to tick all the boxes on site engine optimization when it comes to writing HTML. And like it said here, just the basics, and it's not even compulsory. It's not going to block you writing your applications, but it's something nice to have. Next is CSS. Yeah, CSS, the language you all think is simple until it gets difficult. Yeah, CSS, very core. These three are core to front-end development, and the funny thing is that there's no alternative to that. Unlike backend development, where you can choose to either write PHP or choose to write Java or choose to go with Go. On the front end, you have HTML, you have CSS, you have JavaScript, and there's no alternative. There's no alternative to HTML. There's no alternative to CSS. So CSS, learn the basics. CSS is also something I believe a lot of people downplay. They see it as this very, very straightforward language, and they just learn it a little and feel that they're done. No, I got a reality check when I started working for an actual company on my CSS skills. I thought I was very good at CSS, and I was told, you don't know CSS. It pissed me off for a day, but I realized they were saying the truth, and that ended up helping me to improve my CSS knowledge. You want to learn selectors, very, very key. You want to learn selector hierarchy so that you can be able to properly select items on your page. And most people don't even know that selector hierarchy contributes to page speed. Like if you are constructing your selector selection, if you are constructing your selectors in a way that is not efficient, it can cause your page to load very, very slow. It can contribute to the latency of your page load. So you want to make sure that you have a good grasp of these concepts and use them effectively. Second is making layout. Just as I said about forms in HTML, layouts are going to contribute or consist of 50 to 60% of your work in CSS. If you can arrange elements on a page, oh my, you are a professional in CSS. CSS layout, making layouts in CSS, taking advantage, using the space on your screen, making responsive layouts, those are key to your knowledge in CSS, and you want to take time to just sit down on that and make sure you learn everything properly. Floats, positioning, display, box model. I remember like was it like eight or 9 years ago, I did a video on this same YouTube channel on the box model, so that because I just discovered the power of what I've been missing in paddings, margins. There are also some rules that deal with when you have two boxes on top of each other and their margin is flowing into each other. That's the bottom margin of one box is flowing into the top margin of one. There are very, very hidden rules. There are gotchas, a lot of gotchas in CSS that you will need to know about, and knowing about it is going to help you design more well constructed pages, easier, simpler, and with less stress, because CSS can be very, very stressful, and the only thing that is stressful is because you are missing out on fundamentals. Now we even have a lot of things, not like 9 years ago when I was when I only had the box model, floats, positioning, and stuff. Now we have CSS grid, and we also have the mighty flexbox that most of us tend to forget the rules and Google all the time. Yeah, we have flexbox, and flexbox and CSS grid help a lot in bringing out responsive layouts. That's what made libraries like Bootstrap now defunct, because you can now do it without a library. You can now make responsive layout easily without a library. So that is CSS. Okay, yeah, there's also responsive design. I don't know whether more form factors are going to be coming, but the ones available now are already too much, because we have big screens. We have screens like this, but I also have a big screen over there. So if you're going to be designing for that screen, that's another big problem. We have this type of screens. We have tablet screens, we have phone screens, and let's not even talk about watches. So yeah, if you're going to be developing interfaces, you need to learn responsive design, because you don't want to build one website for each of these mediums. You don't want to build one website for each of these form factors. So responsive design allows you to write your CSS in a way that it can adapt to a screen size, and you can hide or add more elements based on the amount of real estate that you have on the screen. And one thing that makes that possible is media queries. Media queries are very powerful elements, and they're able to help you kind of instruct your page that, okay, if the width is more than this, then you can add these things. If the width is less than this, then don't add these things. And I think one of the best teachings of this responsive design and media queries I ever saw was in Bootstrap documentation, because then Bootstrap had this amazing mobile first approach. So most of us, when we design interfaces, we want to start with the base screens first, and then go down to the smaller screens. But Bootstrap started with this mobile first approach, whereby you incrementally add elements. You build from mobile, then you incrementally add elements to the screen as you approach big sized screens. That's your desktops and your laptops. So that just made thinking about responsive design easy. The mental model around that mobile first approach is just amazing, and that really helped me in that aspect. So that is CSS. So the next thing is the almighty JavaScript. Now, anecdotally, this is where most people start finding web development difficult. This is where most people start complaining, because everything is all lovely and jolly from here. HTML, CSS, everything is just sinking. But once they get to JavaScript, it changes. It becomes cold, and web development starts becoming more challenging. But it's just as the other ones. It's all about learning the basics. It's all about how you think about it, how you reason it, the mental model that you have around it. So, like as we have been told several times, your HTML is what defines the structure of the page. Your CSS styles the page. Now your JavaScript is responsible for behavior, and behavior is relative. And also behavior needs to be defined and controlled. So there needs to be more attention paid to a language like JavaScript, because it is, let's say, alive. So that might be why it's a bit more challenging. And JavaScript is more like actual programming languages. Most programming languages we see, unlike HTML and CSS that are declarative, JavaScript is more like the native programming languages that you see out there. CSS, PHP, Python, and the rest, Java. Yeah, so JavaScript is more in that line. So I think that's why most people end up find it challenging. So the first thing you want to learn is syntax and basic constructs. You want to be familiar with your additions, your arithmetic operations like addition, subtraction, and the rest. You want to know how to declare variables. You want to know how to work with data structures. Yeah, and that's one thing. There's a video I want to do about learning a new programming language. You will still be seeing it on this channel later, but I discovered that when you want to learn a programming language, once you've finished learning all the operations, all the if else and stuff, all the arithmetic functions, Boolean and all that, you need to go and learn the data structures. You need to go and learn the data structures, because programming is all about manipulating data. A large part of programming is about manipulating data. So you want to learn the data structures available under a particular language. So like JavaScript, you want to learn JavaScript data structures. What are JavaScript data structures? We have numbers, we have strings, we have arrays, we have maps, we have sets. And if you know all the functions and properties of a particular data structure, then your JavaScript knowledge is beginning to get solid. It's beginning to solidify. So you want to go to these individual data structures. You want to know all the functions under an array, how to split an array, how to use the array methods. You want to know how to use the array methods. You want to know array attributes like length. You want to learn array methods like map, like so many, any function and attribute of any data structure, be it arrays, be it maps, be it set, be it numbers, be it strings. You want to learn all those things. Those are what would solidify your foundation learning JavaScript. So that's going to be my own advice for you. Then you want to learn DOM manipulation. Technically, DOM manipulation is not JavaScript. DOM manipulation is a browser API, because the DOM is a browser API. You're just basically using JavaScript to speak to that API and get things to change in the DOM. But yeah, we're still going to categorize under JavaScript, because JavaScript is what manipulates it. But DOM manipulation, or the DOM itself, is actually a browser API. It's not part of JavaScript. For people that understand Node.js, you will understand why JavaScript and the DOM are not the same thing. Then you want to learn fetch API. Does anyone still call it Ajax these days? I don't think so. We used to call it Ajax back then, and because there was a club called Ajax, we used to just use that to remember the name. And some call it Ajax, some call it Ajax. I still don't know what is the right pronunciation till now. XHR. Let me see if I can remember XHR. XML, HTTP response, yeah, probably, yeah. But you want to learn the fetch API, because you want to make asynchronous calls to web servers. Before we make synchronous calls to web servers, and you see the page reloading all the time. Maybe you want to submit a form, you see the page reload and all that. But now there is the XHR API that you can use to make asynchronous calls to the server, and that has grown over the years. And now we have the fetch API. Before, we had to use libraries to do these kind of things. We had some jQuery libraries for it, and other frameworks were bringing their own libraries. But now we have the fetch API, and that can help you get that done instead of using the native XHR. That's the HTTP. There's one particular object, XHTTP request object, I think, that you can use to construct an API call and make it asynchronously. But now we have the simple fetch API that is similar to what the libraries brought then, the libraries that jQuery brought then, to make things easier, and you can just use that straight within your browser. And yeah, we also have ES6 and modular JavaScript. Yeah, now you can write modular JavaScript. You can write JavaScript in some sort of object-oriented way. So learning ES6, which is the modern JavaScript syntax, and modular JavaScript, yeah, that is going to be also helpful. But you can still do a lot without writing modular JavaScript. Yeah, a whole lot without writing modular JavaScript. So that, to me, even though it was recommended here, it's not a blocker. It's something that you can always learn later and use it to improve your JavaScript skills. Lastly, understand these concepts. Yeah, this is where all the gotchas in JavaScript hides. So you want to be familiar with this stuff like hoisting, which kind of affects the visibility of variables in your JavaScript script. So how you define variables and the scope with which they are visible. Yeah, hoisting is something you want to understand so that you can know how that affects your variable scope and visibility. Event bubbling, when an event happens, how it bubbles from child to parent, how it goes from parent to child, where it stops bubbling. You want to understand that so that an operation somewhere is not going to affect another operation somewhere else where you don't want it to reach. So for example, if a button is clicked in a child element and you don't want it to get to the parent element, but it has that bubbling effect, you want to know that it occurs, and you want to know how to control it and manipulate it to do what you want. Yeah, scopes, definitely. Function scope, variable scope, prototype, the shadow DOM, and the strict keyword, which is used for writing strict JavaScript, which makes sure that you're crossing your I's and you're dotting your T's when it comes to the use of JavaScript, and you're writing JavaScript according to the rules that would prevent bugs. Yes, that you might, a lot of people then will just remove the use strict at the top of JavaScript, the JavaScript file, so that our linters don't scream at us all the time. But that's not a best practice. You want to write strict JavaScript so that you know that you're following best practices of JavaScript, and you reduce the amount of bugs you have to deal with, and eventually you reduce the amount of time you get frustrated. So next we have version control systems. Now, if you have not worked in the team, you will most likely be skipping this, and that is very, very detrimental to your career as a front-end developer. The biggest advantage of version control systems is the ability to work in a team, because you and your team members can work on different parts of the application and then bring it together through the version control system tools. You can have a repo where you all the repo for one project, and you all work on different parts of the project, and you all submit your work to that repo. And if you have a very organized system, you even have people that approve your changes, people that do your code reviews, and people that merge your changes. So yeah, version control systems, these are your Git. There used to be, is it Mercury or something like that, but yeah, Git is the biggest. And like I said here, basic use of Git. And I'm going to put emphasis on the word basic, because at the end of the day, you most likely just always use 7 Git commands or maybe 5 Git commands. Let's say your Git add, your Git commit, your Git merge, your Git checkout. Yeah, I've already mentioned 4, I think. Yeah, most of the time, those are the commands you'll be using every day. So yeah, basic use of Git. Just know how to use those Git commands very well, and you'll be able to work in most collaborative systems set up with the version control tool. Repo hosting services, create an account and link GitHub. The version control system lives on your system, so you can have different branches of a project on your system. You can do all your versioning on your system, but it makes a lot of sense to host your code so that other people can see it, other people can contribute to it, and also you can have access to it from different systems, and you can always clone it, work on it, push changes, and merge your changes. So you want to use repo hosting services like GitHub. Funny enough, I got to use Bitbucket and GitLab the most because I mostly worked with these version control systems in a organized setting, a corporate setting, where we were building applications for a software company. So I was using GitLab and GitHub and Bitbucket mostly because then they offered private repos for free, something that GitHub was charging money for then. So, but a lot of people were using GitHub for their private projects, which they still use till today. But GitHub now offer private repos since Microsoft bought them. They now have free private repos that you can use. So yeah, a lot of people are putting their enterprise application on GitHub also, locked behind a private repo. So yeah, you see, GitLab and Bitbucket is also mentioned here as an alternative to GitHub. I use GitHub a lot too for my personal projects, for my demos, for my tutorials and stuff. But like I said, just my own personal experience when it comes to working in an organization, I've mostly used GitLab and Bitbucket. But I think, yeah, the last firm where I was heavily pushing code to their repo, I think they use GitHub. Yeah, I remember being added to a GitHub GitHub account, but I can't remember making any contribution because I wasn't in the software team. Yeah, so we have web security knowledge. Yeah, web security knowledge, that's something that people skip a lot. You see here, it has a gray check mark, so it's something you can learn later, but you want to know how to secure your websites or your web applications because people are trying to attack it. Things like SQL injection, XSS attacks. Yeah, that's cross-site scripting, I think. Yeah, and yeah, these days they are even more advanced. Attacks, people are spoofing IP addresses and stuff, so someone can actually pretend they're you. People are doing phishing attacks and stuff. So you want to protect you want to have some security knowledge so you can protect your applications. You want to know how to use CORS properly. Yeah, CORS, we hate it when it's happening to us, but we love it when we're using it. So you want to learn how to set up CORS rules. There's also this, they're here. I didn't even see them here. Yeah, so you have HTTPS. You want to use HTTPS. That's your SSL certificate, making sure that all the transactions, the HTTP transactions going on your servers are encrypted, so that even if somebody can sniff your packets and they can see what's in your packet, it will be encrypted, so they can make sense of what is inside. Content security policy, CSP, it came a couple of years ago. I remember discovering it when I was creating a mobile application with Ionic, and they started enforcing CSP. They kind of make use of meta tags to define some security policies. So that's also cool. Then CORS, like I said, CORS, almighty CORS. And OWASP security risks. Yeah. OWASP, yeah, that should be open web association security, something. Yeah. I know they are this organization whereby they keep a catalog of the security vulnerabilities that you can face. So they rank them every year, which ones you are most vulnerable to. So it's always good to keep up with that so that you can know what is important for you to protect. So yeah, that's the security aspect. Get basic knowledge of these and just know how to work with them. Then we have package managers. Package managers, they help you to bundle your code because no, not bundle your code. They help you to add packages to your code, like libraries to your code. For example, I don't think people build applications these days without contacting npm. Before, we used to have some other package hosting or library hosting hosting site. I can't remember anyone, but if I do, I'll mention it before I finish this video. But now it's just npm. Everybody's just on npm. Really trying to remember those things. Yeah. So package managers, they help you to pull packages, just like people that use Visual Studio use Nugget, I think, to pull packages. So you have npm, we have npm in the front end, and npm is the most popular one. There was a time Yarn was really making waves, and a lot of people, it was like the coolest thing to do, drop npm for Yarn. But I can't remember the last time anybody used Yarn. I saw maybe the tutorial or something, or I used Yarn for a while and I dropped it when npm got better. Probably hardcore React programmers still use Yarn. Maybe PNMP never used that. Probably never heard of it. But yeah, npm is more like the default now. Like default. If you remember any of those older packages, especially for the front end, just write it in the comment section. I'm really struggling to remember, and they were really popular then. They were really popular ones then, but I just can't remember any one of them now. CSS Architecture, BEM. I'm not going to claim I know this so much, but I believe it brings architecture into how you write CSS, and I love all things architecture. Anything that is going to be convention over configuration, for me, I love it. So it will teach you how to architect your CSS. But I'm more familiar with CSS preprocessors because at a point CSS started becoming very tedious, and we had to start introducing the kind of dynamic features that we had in usual programming languages into CSS, like things like writing functions, declaring variables and stuff. And that was how SAS, and there used to be SCSS, I believe it still exists, SCSS. This post CSS, I never used it, but I use SAS and SCSS, and these preprocessors help you convert this pseudo CSS, or rather this hybrid CSS languages into actual CSS that your browser can read, because your browser can't read this. So yeah, so as you see, it's also these are all ticked in gray, so you can always learn it later, and learning it is going to fortify you as a front-end developer. Now we move to build tools. Now, when you are compiling your code, which we all do now, you want things like linters to help you check for errors, so stuff like ESLint. You want formatters. Like I said, it's always good to write well formatted code, but most of us are not that disciplined to write formatted code. So you can also introduce a formatter into your build process. So a linter will tell you if there are errors. A formatter is going to help you format your HTML, CSS, or JavaScript. And prettier and ESLint are very big in that aspect. Prettier basically prettifies your code, formats it in a pretty format, and ESLint will help you catch errors. So these are also cool tools that will help your life as a front-end developer. We also have task runners. Sometimes you want some background tasks to run. Sometimes you want some tasks to run before your code is being bundled. Maybe you want to convert some data types into another. Maybe you want to mangle some files so that you can reduce their bundle size. But whether you want to run a command before a particular action takes place, you want to use npm script to do that. We use it to run tests. We use it to copy files from one place to another, and yeah, you can basically just run anything you want to run with a task runner, and npm scripts are very popular for that, and that's why they've been given the purple tick. Then module bundlers, module bundlers. Modular code is not readable by most browsers. Some browsers are catching up, but they're not readable by most browsers. So you want to use these module bundlers to convert them from to something that is more supported by all browsers, even older browsers. So Webpack used to be big time. It was like the de facto that time. Everybody was just writing Webpack, and Webpack had its own community. I believe they still do. But then rollup started coming, and I think one major advantage that rollup had over Webpack was that it always produced this clean build. That was like the main selling point for Rollup then. The build was just so clean. So Rollup was giving Webpack some competition. But today we have Vite. I think Vite came from the Vue guys. I believe so. Yeah. My first hearing of Vite came from the Vue guys, but now is framework agnostic. So I believe they use it for any type of script. ES build. So you have Parcel. I've heard of Parcel before, never seen it in action. ES build, never seen it in action, but I've seen Vite, used Webpack a lot, used Rollup a little bit, and these are your module bundlers. So yeah, they help you bundle your code in a way that is supported by every browser, because some browsers don't support modules yet. Yeah, like I said before. After build tools, we then pick a framework. So to pick a framework, now JavaScript frameworks are basically turning into religions now. So I'm just going to give my own personal opinion, just as they have given here, and I'm going to run through all the frameworks and all the ones I've used and the ones I've not touched. So yeah, picking a framework. Here it's recommended. React is recommended by the roadmap.sh team. I used React heavily. I used React for web applications. I used React for mobile applications using Ionic. And I think there was a time I tried, was it React VR? There was a time I was into VR and I wanted to try React VR. So I can't remember when I actually did stuff with it then. But I used React for mobile applications using Ionic a lot. I also used React Native. So that was cool. React is quite cool. I started with Angular, maybe because I started with Angular 1 from the Angular 1 days. So I just felt it would be cool to just move into Angular 2. And everything became confusing from Angular 2. So everything became really weird in the Angular world from Angular 2. And that managed, after some applications, even built some enterprise applications with Angular, but I started going to React after all that Angular 2 debacle, sort of. Then came Vue.js. Now, this is my personal recommendation. It might not flow with a lot of you guys, but this is the framework I recommend. I love Vue.js. I've used it to build enterprise applications. I've used it to build regular web startups and also mobile applications using Ionic. Also, I love Ionic. Is a mighty sweet framework for building mobile applications. So I'm a big Ionic fan. So yeah, Vue.js. So I've used these three heavily. These three I've used them both in production and for my own personal work. Svelte, I used Svelte and I loved it, but I mainly used it for tutorials and stuff. So I didn't get to use it for any professional work, but it was really looking solid, and I believe it has grown so much since then, because I think I wrote those tutorials like 2 years ago at least. So I believe Svelte has become really strong since then, because it was really coming on strong. Solid.js, never heard of it. Never heard of it. Quite bold to call something Solid.js, because another one might just come and be more solid. But yeah, this Solid.js, I've never heard of it before. I think when you click this, you see this preview here. Solid.js is a reactive JS. They are reactive for building user interfaces without a virtual DOM. Oh, without a virtual DOM. Now that's interesting, because React got its all hype from the whole virtual DOM thing. But anyway, probably check that out later. But I've never even seen their website before. So, but I've worked with these first three at all levels. I didn't use Angular to build a mobile app though, but I use it to build all sorts of web apps. But React and Vue used it to build everything. Svelte, wrote a few tutorials on it, and it was pretty sweet. Solid.js, never heard of it. So then to modern CSS. Like I said, I'm not going to claim to be a professional in modern CSS. I fully understand CSS very well, but modern CSS, man, it's a lot to keep up with. So, and CSS was not really my area of specialization. I just knew how to do it. So I'm not going to disclaimer. I might say something's wrong. So CSS frameworks. CSS frameworks. Oh, let's go back to modern CSS. So modern CSS. Styled components, I know how to style components. CSS modules, you heard of them. Styled JSX, emotion, yeah, these were just all plenty buzzwords and libraries that were flying in the CSS world. But I won't say I used any one of them directly, but yeah, they exist, and I believe they make your CSS life a lot easier. So do check them out. CSS frameworks. Of all this, I use Tailwind. Tailwind is amazing. I don't care what anybody says about Tailwind. Tailwind is awesome. For people like me that are not CSS, masters, I'm just a CSS, I'll just give myself pro. Yeah. I love Tailwind because it just helps you get a lot done, and all you have to think about is your design, and you just add a few classes and you have it. You start writing like a CSS master. So I love Tailwind. It's amazing, and you see the roadmap.sh guys agree with me. So blue, purple check all the way. Then we have Mantine, never heard of it. Chakra UI. Oh, definitely. I'm definitely repping Chakra UI. Why? Because it was created by a Nigerian like me. Yeah. If you go to the Chakra UI website, yeah. Sorry guys, I'm going to rep this totally. So if you go to the Chakra UI website, scroll down to the last, yeah, you see proudly made in Nigeria by Segun Adebayo. Yeah. So I'm farming that 100%. So Chakra UI is also amazing, especially I think it started with React, but I believe they now have libraries for or UI components for other popular front-end frameworks also. But Chakra UI is quite good. I use Material UI, the Angular days. Material UI, very disturbing, but when you get it right, it's really slick. Daisy UI, never heard of it. Radix UI, never heard of it, but I believe they're all awesome for them to make this list. So yeah, I'm still going to give Tailwind, just like the roadmap.sh guys, I'm still going to give Tailwind the nod. But yeah, Chakra UI, Material UI are also UI libraries I've used, and they've been fantastic. Yeah, a small shout out to Bootstrap and a framework called Bulma. Never heard of that, but Bootstrap had its days. Bootstrap is like jQuery now. It's an OG. Still useful, still usable, but their time is gone. But they really gave us wonderful memories, and we won't be here today without them. Yeah, let's just let's put it that way. So yeah, next we're going to do is testing. Going to testing. So to testing your apps, I love test. I love this section. I'm probably one of the 5% people in the world that will say they love writing tests. Like I know the general perception about tests, so let me not pretend that that's not real. Tests can be quite tedious, but when you learn when you think about them more in terms of the value they give to you, which is that they help you to remove bugs from your application, and that adds value to your development process, you start having a different perception as to why you write tests, and you probably, I'm not promising, enjoy writing them eventually. And today we have ChatGPT, so you probably just tell ChatGPT to write all your tests for you. So testing your applications, yeah, learn the difference between unit testing, integration testing, functional testing. I have a lot of articles on testing in case you will be interested. I might if I remember, I'll add the link in the description. But yeah, you have to learn the differences between these tests. Unit tests, you test like small portions of yours application, like small functions, small modules and stuff. Just test unit functionalities in isolation. Then integration tests, you test a process. For example, let's say a checkout process, let's say a payment process. From beginning to the end, you test the whole process, and that can involve several components. So that's your integration test. And your functional test, your entire application, the way a user is going to use your application. Those are your functional tests. So yeah, you learn to write those, automate them. These are the testing libraries. Some of the testing libraries, I love Jest. Jest is just amazing, because for you to have a whole complete testing suite, you need 4 things. You need an assertion library, you need a test runner, and 2 other things I can't really remember, but you need 4 things. And Jest just combines everything in one sweet library. So Jest is amazing. React testing library for React is amazing. I think there's also a Vue testing library. There's also an Angular testing library. So anytime you want to use Jest, just use any of those testing library, like Vue testing library. There's even a Svelte testing library. I think I used that before. So yeah, just use those. Very amazing for unit tests and integration tests. Then when you want to start writing functional tests, you want to use something like Cypress, which is very fun. It's quite fun because, and I know it's really absurd, I'm talking about tests and I'm using the word fun, but the thing about Cypress is that you can write how your app is going to be used, and when you run Cypress, you see it load up the browser, you see it click buttons, enter stuff into. It's fun to watch. Maybe I should just put the fun there. Fun to watch, probably not fun to write, but fun to watch, and you get to see how the usage of your application is automated, and it will spring. You can see any point where errors come up and stuff. I did I did a course for LinkedIn Learning. I did a course for view testing, to tell you how much I love Vue. I did a view testing course where I covered unit tests, integration tests, and also functional tests, and I used Cypress in that course. So we'll probably link that course to in the description if you want to check it out. But even if you're not writing Vue, it just shows you how the whole testing process is, how you write unit tests, integration tests, and functional tests with these tools, because there are variations of these tools for Angular, for React, and your favorite framework. So yeah, tests, amazing, yeah. Then from testing, we go to authentication strategies. We mentioned web security the last time. So web security is very, very important to secure your applications because people will be trying to attack it. I remember one time I set up a WordPress site so many years ago, I think probably 8 years ago, set up a WordPress site, and just after a few minutes of setting it up, I already saw in the logs some bot trying to hack it. Like so many hacking requests already firing at the home page. So bots and people threat actors will always want to attack your application. So you want to make sure that you are tight on security. And one of the most important security systems you can put in place is authentication. You want to authenticate stuff. We have the JOT authentication, which is the de facto for APIs these days. We have OAuth, SSO, that's a single sign-on. So you can, I think that uses Open Identity, to help you set up authentication through another identity provider. For example, your app, you can have sign in with Microsoft, sign in with Apple, and stuff like that. So that's what SSO does for you. We also basic authentication. That's the most basic authentication strategy that comes with the HTTP protocol, session auth, and the rest. So yeah, you want to also be tight on your authentication strategies and pick the best one for your use case. The next is web components. Yeah, those were big. I don't know whether they're still big. Yeah, web components, reusable HTML templates, custom elements, shadow DOM, and stuff. As you can see, it's something you can learn later, but yeah, that's another quite interesting part of front-end development that helps you write reusable HTML. Just bringing more advancements to HTML, and one thing is that as HTML improves, the frameworks start becoming less and less compulsory, or less and less the de facto for creating modern applications. So HTML is improving, and the way you see components in different types of frameworks, yeah, with the web, HTML has its own components too, and you can create custom elements using HTML and the shadow DOM. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And after web components, we have type checkers. Now, if you notice, after these authentication strategies, most of the things we're going to be talking about are with this gray check mark. So there are mostly things you can learn later just to improve your skills, just to upgrade yourself and move to that next level. So in as much as you might have some things under them that are recommended, the primary topics are just things that you can learn later, just like web components. So yeah, type checkers, yeah, TypeScript bought types, which kind of plays into the name. Before TypeScript, there was CoffeeScript, and there was some other hybrid JavaScript variants like that tried to bring types to JavaScript, but I think TypeScript won that battle. So TypeScript is like the main JavaScript hybrid language now if you want to add types to JavaScript. So yeah, TypeScript, pretty cool. Angular enforced it sometimes, against our will, but TypeScript has a huge following, and it's just lovely. It's lovely, especially when you know how to use it. Frustrating when you don't. So progressive web apps, yeah, progressive web apps help you to have native-like experiences with web applications. So you have things like the app shell, where you can load stuff offline and stuff like that. It really made local storage popular, and there was also this script. I can't remember. Maybe if I remember, I will remember. I will mention it rather. But yeah, I might just find it here. Yeah, these are the things that local storage, progressive web apps made popular. Things like storage, WebSockets, server-side, service workers. That's what I was looking for. Service workers. Yeah, they became like this big thing, and they help you to define stuff in your applications that make your application work like native apps. Like they can load even when there's no internet connection. They can load some stuff, and the app shell is always going to open whether there's internet connection or not. And you can have these default elements that will be in the app shell. You can even go as far as having an icon for it. Yeah, your web app is going to have an icon that can be on the user's phone, and when they click the icon, it's going to load your app, and your app can also load in full screen, just like a native application. So progressive web apps, very, very smooth, very, very cool. Didn't take up as much as you expect them to be because Google tried a lot to push it then, but yeah, they're still a very, very powerful framework for introducing native-like capabilities into web applications. So you have service workers and even APIs like location, notifications, device orientation, payments. They supported all this stuff, just similar to how native apps would. So yeah, it's very, very nice. Like I said, didn't get as much adoption as you would expect it to, but it's still powerful, it's still that potent, and it might take off anytime. I think one of the things that really killed it was Apple didn't support it in time. So yeah, so that was a bummer. There is also this progressive web apps, also brought about this old tradition of calculating your page speed with Lighthouse. You want to know how your how fast your page loads, how it performs based on some metrics defined by Lighthouse. Lighthouse is this performance tool in Chrome, the Chrome browser. So yeah, these were all made popular by the wave around progressive web apps at that time. Server-side rendering, server-side rendering, as I will call it, front end trying to do what PHP did those days. They told us to write everything in the front end. Then later they told us that we had to render server-side. Things just keep changing. Best practices keep changing, and that's one fun thing about web development and one dynamic thing about web development. We just keep having new things. First blue is black, then black is blue, and stuff like that. So, but it's all part of the thing. So for your favorite frameworks, React, Angular, Vue, Svelte, they all have their server-side rendering libraries. For React, the most popular ones are Remix and Next. I've used Next before, never used Remix before. Angular Universal, that was a big deal to that time. Never got to learning it, but I always put it in my to learn list, and I never got to it. Vue.js, Nuxt, Nuxt. I love Nuxt. I use Nuxt. I even use Nuxt in production. So I told you I'm a Vue.js fan. So Vue.js fanboy, Nuxt, like bread and butter. Svelte also has Svelte Kit. I never use Svelte Kit, but like I said, I use Svelte. So these are their server-side rendering options. Static generators, those are they help you generate static websites from the whole dynamism that is going on with your frameworks like Angular, Vue, and the rest. So they help you generate .html websites from those frameworks. So lots of them. I'm just going to talk about the ones I used. So Next, I use Next.js. I use Gatsby. I use Gatsby very well. I use VuePress once or twice. Vue fanboy, like I said. Nuxt, big fan. So I think I used like 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are the ones I use with all these static generators. But they're cool. Static generation helps you with page speed, and when you don't want a dynamic website but you want to generate it dynamically, you can just use that for your static websites so that you can host them on even stuff like Google Pages or so. Google Pages. No, GitHub Pages, not Google Pages. GitHub Pages. So you can host them on simple hosting services as simple as GitHub Pages. Then GraphQL. GraphQL. Similar to what happened with progressive web apps, it was this awesome idea. APIs were always a mess because you had like these tens and hundreds of endpoints that you might have to call, and GraphQL decided to replace it with one URL, like one. How awesome could that be? Instead of having to know and deal with tens and hundreds of API endpoints, you only have to do one. And GraphQL did that. And I remember I coined some sort of name. I wrote this very popular introduction to GraphQL article back then. And the name I coined for it was like SQL in the front end. Like you could just write queries in the front end to query the kind of data you want. But it was amazing. And Apollo was one of the top people that bet their future on GraphQL. And they still exist because the GraphQL technology still existed. GraphQL came as a result of Facebook wanting to solve their problem with the same API problem, having to call so many APIs. I think Honeypot, for those of you that know about Honeypot, the Honeypot YouTube channel, they have a history of GraphQL video, so you can watch that to see how GraphQL came to be. But it was a Facebook solution to a big problem. So, and probably that's why it didn't take off, because Facebook is a big company, so they have some peculiar problems, some problems that are only peculiar to their size and scale that a lot of us are not familiar with, or we never get to, because we're just small companies or medium-sized companies. So probably that's why GraphQL did not become like a must for a lot of people. They could still deal with their 15, 20 API endpoints instead of Facebook that is trying to deal with probably thousands. So yeah, Relay Modern, never heard of that, but I believe they're also big in the GraphQL space. Then we have mobile applications. Like I said, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript have grown so much. When I started 13 years ago, you could just use them to create websites, but now you can use them to create mobile applications. And I was a big part of that, I was a big part of that evolution, not as a contributor. I wish I contributed, but as a user, I was a big part of that evolution. The only one I've not used in all these frameworks for creating mobile applications is Flutter. Yeah, Flutter. I didn't get to use Flutter because at that time I think I wasn't really into mobile applications anymore. I had gotten over it. So, but I use Ionic a lot. Yeah, I use Ionic a lot. Created a lot of production mobile applications with Ionic. Add them on Play Store, add them on Apple Store. Use React Native a little bit, but Ionic was just too good and too flexible and very easy to use without all the baggage of React Native. React Native had too many baggage, and React Native, then I remember that was the first time I learned about cyclic dependencies, the issue of cyclic dependencies. Like it just started it was too much of a burden for me. So Ionic kept being awesome, and I just continued using Ionic. I even have like I think a course or two on Ionic. Yeah. So native script, native script was showing a lot of promise, and it's still showing a lot of promise. A lot of people are using it and they're enjoying it. So I believe it's a very wonderful and lovely ecosystem. I tried to switch to it severally, but I was just too happy with Ionic, so I just continued with Ionic. But native script is good. I've seen a lot of wonderful things there, and I'm sure that it's amazing. Like I said, the front-end development has evolved a lot. Now we're creating mobile applications, and yeah, we can also create desktop applications. Who would have thought? Because I remember then, these native guys used to like try to make us feel less of ourselves. Yeah, I can create native apps. When you create native apps, creative apps are more difficult. Creative apps are more complex. Yeah, now we can create native apps, and I have done some with Electron. I've created desktop applications with Electron. I think it was the time I even created my own version of Zoom. Yes, video calling. I did a video calling. I think I still have the repo on my GitHub page. Yeah, the repo on my GitHub page. Did my own with this API. Oh my, I forgot the API. There's this API on the web now that you can use to transfer video signals over the wire. I was very into that then, so I just used Electron to create my own version of Zoom. So yeah, Electron, Tauri, never heard of Tauri before. Flutter, I think this is just similar to how Ionic claims it can create desktop apps now. So yes, Flutter 2 says you can create a desktop app. I believe it can. I've not seen it before, so I can't really say much about it. And yeah, it seems we're at the end. Yeah, so that's everything. Thanks to roadmap.sh. This is amazing. This is a front-end roadmap. I'm also going to be doing the back-end roadmap, so you're going to be seeing that soon. I'm doing this first, so in case you're seeing this video and I've not dropped that, I'm still going to be dropping it. And I'm also going to be doing some of their roadmaps, also the ones that I have experience with. This has been quite amazing. And if you scroll up, by the way, I'm going to put this link also in the description. This is roadmap.sh/frontend. And at the top here, there's this button that says that you can see the beginner version. So I decided to do this because I know that this will be more fun and you can see everything. But there's a beginner version. If this is too overwhelming, you can click visit beginner version, and it's just turn this to this very simple tree view of different simple branches that you can just go with. And yeah, sure. Once you do this, you're already, as they say, job ready. So thanks to roadmap.sh for this amazing resource. And yeah, That's the video. So that's your front-end developer roadmap. Thanks to roadmap.sh for the amazing roadmap. And if you've enjoyed this video, remember to like and also subscribe to the channel. If you want to see the roadmap for the backend and other roadmaps, also remember to turn on the notification button so that you can know when the video drops. Thanks, and see you in another video.